Yeah. Ever since I was little, I've wanted to be a sports announcer. It doesn't really It doesn't really matter what sport or what medium it was. I mean, I'd be content doing radio. I'd be content doing writing. I'd be content doing TV. But I've always wanted to do something with sports. And this was obviously back before the internet was a big thing, before the internet supplanted everything else media-wise, so therefore options were still kind of a thing. And I was admittedly stubborn going into college because I was warned, I was like, hey, the media landscape's changing. Broadcast journalism may not be a thing that you have a good chance in the sports realm, especially because a lot of them are legacy jobs. But I was stubborn, and I felt that if I put enough effort, or if I was given just one opportunity, I would hold on to it and never let go, kind of thing. Unfortunately, that seems to be the mentality for a lot of sports writers and personalities nowadays, is that barring big mistakes, they hold on to those opportunities for life and never really let go. But I put a lot of extra effort into studying history in college too, so that I could maybe write about other things. And so it's really all just been about looking for the perfect opportunity, and hopefully that when that breakthrough opportunity comes, there will be no more major obstacles. Yes, I've worked for the Milwaukee Milkmen and the Milwaukee Wave, both owned by Rock Ventures. Unfortunately, they were more of paid internship positions. I did do a lot of writing and game day operations for both teams, so I got to experience a lot of the inner workings and get better at them, and kind of, especially on what I like to call a semi-pro level, the idea that they're teams that cater to the hardcore market of the local town, but they're not necessarily known. You're gonna see them on ESPN or Fox Sports or anything like that. Those are the types of teams that I really admire, even though that's not where necessarily the most fame or money is. But I did enjoy my experience working with them, and I really do wish that it could have been a more prolonged one. But I do think that it was a great eye-opener and ground-level foundation experience. I am trying to make it so that if you aren't there, you understand what I'm going for, or what happened, but I'm trying to do it in a sophisticated way. I'm trying to use language and words that you don't necessarily hear in sports talk, you hear more in writing. So you're not just reading a sports article, you're reading a poem, a novel, something like that you can picture exactly what's going on. It may not be as eloquent or detailed as those types of media, but hopefully by peppering more thoughtful dictionary-esque language, you get more of an I can picture this more vividly in my mind, instead of just looking at the basic stat line, which of course is obviously important, and I think that matters a lot to people too, which is why I always try to concentrate on a couple of key stats and numbers that people can look back and say, oh yeah, this was something important that happened at the game that didn't necessarily tell the story, but it was there. It's definitely been football because of the Green Bay Packers, but I will also admit to, over time, in recent years, growing very fond of hockey. It's got almost nothing to do with Wisconsin being a cold weather state and it being in my backyard. I fell in love with the National Hockey League once again over time, and after years and years of ignoring it, not because I didn't think it was interesting, but because it just wasn't on my radar. So I mean, between the two of those, it's probably definitely more of football because the local Wisconsin connection and just the bigness of the Packers. But For me, really the only sport that I personally cannot really watch and enjoy watching is basketball. And that's because of the fact that while I understand the game and I can appreciate the game, I feel like basketball, especially at the highest levels, is far more an individual sport than a team sport. That's why I've enjoyed covering high school basketball. It's because you can tell that this is where it's at its purest form, the true team sport that it's meant to be. I went to school at the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater from 2013 to May of 2017 with a major in broadcast journalism, emphasis in print, media, web, and a minor in history. I thought that my thinking being that if I didn't become a sports broadcaster of any description, I could be a tour guide or a curator at a historical museum. And of course, those jobs apparently require actual historical education, unfortunately. But the idea kind of stuck the same. But I did get actually one really good job that was probably my favorite job of all time, doing a tour guide job, so I can't complain entirely. My favorite thing about college was working at the radio station. I did 97 The Edge down there. WSUW is the call sign. I talked sports, but I also did my own weekly show where I talked about my other interests outside comic books and video games and things like that, to just kind of spread my appeal and let people get to know me. And I did that for almost 3 years, and it was probably the most fun I had. I mean, I enjoyed several of my classes, but that was the one thing that if I could go back and do anything over again, I would not only take radio from the very beginning, but I would also internship at other local radio stations to kind of put me in better position to where I am now.
You have a very solid, is it a photographic memory?
It's pretty close to photographic. It's actually kind of funny. I can remember a lot of like little details and like minute stuff, and things like historical dates and like certain like setups to events. But when it comes to like day-to-day names and things like that, I'll admit to being very bad. Like I'll see somebody that I haven't seen in like a few years, and I'll be like, you are? So it's definitely a quirk of mine to be able to remember things from sports, history, or just day to day, but yet I can't sometimes place like faces and places and like things like that. But I think that that's something that does help contribute to me being a unique person, because nobody who meets me will ever, have the same conversation twice.
What is it about the high school sports game? You described it before about being in the purest form. When student athletes can combine their academics and athletics, how important do you think that is?
I think it's very important. I think that it gives that all-important extra motivation that I feel that is often lacking in the adult world. When you have just a 9 to 5 to fight for, it can become a routine grind, and life will wear you down until you quit, kind of thing. But if you have motivation to do well in school, so that you can have something that you care about waiting for you that doesn't feel like work. Like, yeah, you have to put effort into it, but it doesn't necessarily feel like work because you're doing it with friends. You're doing it for something that you feel you can care about in your school logo, your school fans, your friends and family, as well as for yourself, potentially benefit down the line with scholarships and colleges taking notice. That gives you extra motivation to continue with your academic studies, so that sports can be that outlet to let everything else kind of just leave it behind at the end of the day.
What kind of student were you?
I was mostly an academic student. I did do some athletics, but I was never blessed with good athletic. I was blessed with height and not much else.